Recently, the legacy media made a big push to proclaim that 88 corporate leaders have announced that they are endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Now, everybody takes note. All business community is with Kamala Harris. And these endorsements may reflect the ongoing shift to Democrats becoming the party of big business and corporate interest. And there's no lie about that. I've talked about that all the time. But a closer look at the actual list of signatories is incredibly revealing. Almost all of the recognizable brands in this list of endorsements had former, these are washed-up wokers who signed on. Now, does this reflect corporate fear, maybe, that has kind of driven them away from making public embracements of woke candidates like Kamala Harris? Does it show that the anti-woke pushback of everyday Americans is working? Join me now to discuss this and more is Suzanne Bowdey, editorial director and senior writer for The Washington Stand. Suzanne, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So the headlines made it look like all these business leaders, corporate America, lining up behind Kamala Harris. And as I said, to be true, the business community's gone left. But there's more to this story.
Absolutely. And the headlines are doing exactly what they intended, which is if you just skim those headlines, you come away with the impression that everyone in corporate America thinks Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have had great economic policy, and they haven't. But if you actually click on that headline and you read those names, as you said, 44 of the 88 of those names from recognizable brands are past leaders, past executives, which to me says these businesses are seeing what's happening to Bud Light, to Harley Davidson, to Coors Light, to all of these businesses and saying, we want no part of that. We don't want the pushback to come at our door. The punishment has been too great to our profit margins. And so we're going to play it safe. And let me read some of these brands to you because these would be the next targets. We're talking about Sam's Club, Walgreens, Starbucks, Xerox, American Express, American Airlines, Expedia, Pepsi, Ford, GoDaddy, Lyft. These are companies that American consumers can take out their frustrations on, and they have been for the last 17 months.
But in this case, these are former CEOs.
Yes. So they don't speak on behalf of the company. They actually don't even qualify as business leaders. They're former business leaders. They don't actually even have jobs with these companies anymore.
So is this corporate America trying to have it both ways?
Oh, I absolutely think so, because attached to those names is Pepsi, is Ford, is Zillow, are all of these things, so they can say, well, we kind of lean this way, but it's not our official spokesperson saying this much.
But this actually is something to celebrate in a sense, because this shows that consumers have had a profound impact upon these brands by their reaction to things like Bud Light, Tractor Supply, John Deere. I mean, the message is getting through.
I think the message of this is if you're an American who's taken a stand for your values with your dollar, you're winning. And I think 17 months ago, when Bud Light slapped the face of Dylan Mulvaney on their cans, they had no idea that this sustained, potent pressure would come to the doorsteps of all of these brands. And you have to also credit the activists who for years have fought this battle in the dark without much help. And now you have the people like Robbie Starbuck, who's exposing these brands, exposing the policies going on behind closed doors. In fact, just last week, Coors Light and also Ford said, we're no longer taking part in the Human Rights Campaign Equality Index for corporate businesses. And that is a major slap in the face of what many consider to be the largest LGBT lobby. I mean, they are scrambling to figure out how to get their footing back at this point.
It's amazing. You look back on it. I can't imagine that Bud Light ever thought that Dylan Mulvaney on their can would cause consumers to open a can of their own, whooping up on them after that. I mean, it's had a profound impact on consumers. But I think we need to realize where the left still is going with this and how businesses will continue to do this as long as they can get away with it. I'm going to play a clip. This is of Kamala Harris back in 2017 talking about wokeness and just, she's trying to put on kind of a new appearance of being more moderate, if you will. Play that clip.
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
How is that for a campaign slogan in 2024? I mean, they need to be playing this on repeat in campaign ads.
But again, the good news is that as people have said, you know what, enough is enough, and they stand up and they verbalize their opposition, and they also use their dollars, voting with their dollars, voting with their feet, that it makes a difference.
It's a tangible thing that all of us can do if we're paying attention to the right things. And you always say courage breeds courage. And I think for a lot of years people thought, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? But you see what happens when an army of conservatives, and it's not just conservatives. One thing I would say to Kamala Harris is she's in trouble because 3/4 of Americans don't want politics in the marketing of any brand. In fact, they just did a new poll in July that said 3 out of 4. Now that crosses all the parties, that crosses race, age.
That's very interesting. I was just talking to John Sorensen, who is actually, by the way, they're a co-sponsor of the Value Voters, the Pre-Vote Stand Summit, a evangelism explosion. And I was in Kansas City this weekend, and they were actually there. I was there for something else. But they were out doing evangelism explosion, where they were having conversations. They were witnessing to people. They were just having conversations on the street. And he said every person they stopped, when they asked, said, "Can I ask you a question?" They said, "Is it political?"
Wow.
And then when they said no, "Oh, sure." Every person talked to them once they realized it wasn't a political question. Politically, we've become so polarized in this country, and in part it's because of this stuff that is being force-fed down Americans' throat that they're just sick and tired of it.
But I also think there's a fear factor to that.
Yeah,
I mean, nobody
there is.
wants to be the only person who says, oh, I don't agree with this LGBT activism. But when there are millions of people making one big statement, it is so powerful where we've come in just 2 years. I mean, things people never thought possible are happening.
We can make these statements and we can express ourselves without being. Look, there's going to be conflict at times, but we don't have to be disagreeable in the way we disagree. And that, look, we have every right as an American to express our views. And frankly, if we're not doing so, we're not speaking out, we're not using our dollars in a way that fosters an environment that the values we care about and trying to instill in our children can go forward, then we're doing a disservice to our families, to our community, and to our country.
Absolutely. I believe it's a biblical mandate, not only the stewardship aspect, but in Colossians, everything you eat and drink do to the glory of God. This is one of those things where we can make a huge difference just in the minute choices we're making in the grocery aisle.
Right. Yeah, you can't bring glory to God in Starbucks. I mean,
you sure can't. Thank you. Yes.
Well, I mean, look, I think about these things, and I know my kids, who are adults now, they think about these things, and I think we need to think through all of these elements when we make purchases. And sometimes we drive past certain places, and sometimes we do without. We'll just say, all right, I don't need that, just because we do not want to facilitate those who are actually taking our profits, the profits they gain from us, and using them against us.
And also look what's happened when you've done that. People are listening. The people that have the power to make these decisions, to pull themselves out of these DEI, pro-trans, LGBT policies, are listening to the consumer. So I think everyone's making a difference, even just one person.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the Pre-Vote Stand Summit that's coming up October the 3rd through the 6th. There's still room for people to register and be there. Let's talk about who's going to be there.
We have a great lineup, including someone you might know, Tony Perkins, some guy named Tony Perkins.
How about that?
Yeah, Mike Huckabee. We have Jack Hibbs. We have Pastor Gary Hamrick. We have Oz Guinness, the Benham brothers, Aaron Hawley, the better half of Senator Josh Hawley, who we all love.
He told me he's coming, too.
Oh, well, we'll hold him to that because this is radio.
All right.
But there are also some new faces, too, that we're excited about. We've never had Cissy Graham Lynch. We've never had Vodi Bakum. So those are a couple people you can also look forward to hearing from. And we also will have a lot of really interactive panels on the issues that matter right now. I mean, we'll be diving into Title IX and parental rights, education, the transgender movement, religious freedom, et cetera. So
The name does reflect what we do.
Absolutely.
And there was a reason we went from Values Voter Summit a few years back to Pray, Vote, Stand Summit, because we realize that our nation is, the battles that we're fighting, these issues that are coming before us, and never has this been clear when we're talking about, just like for the debate last night, children, their lives being taken after birth. The Democratic Convention, where they had a mobile abortion clinic outside the convention where nearly 24 abortions were done. We're in a spiritual battle. And the only way we can win that spiritual battle and hope to prevail is, number one, through prayer and through biblical truth. And so what folks are going to see at the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit, they're going to get plenty of information. They're going to rub elbows with a number of political leaders. But we're going to pray. We're going to be informed so that we can vote biblical values, and we're going to be equipped to stand for that truth. Not just on November 5th, but November 5th and beyond, we have to stand for that truth.
And I would add that one of the really cool, unique things about this year, this is our 19th year of doing this national summit, is that we've added an evening on Thursday night. This is new. We've not done this before, on the 3rd, where we're actually going to intentionally set aside time to pray, set aside time to worship and reflect before we even get into the issues, because we believe that is so important.
And who's speaking that night?
We'll
those
have
are
Mike
biblical
Huckabee,
messages.
yeah, Mike Huckabee and Bishop Vincent Matthews, who's always a favorite at the summit, and perhaps more. We'll see.
Well, it is. It's going to be a critical time for us to gather, to pray for our nation, to make sure we're prepared. Because we've been talking about this. We're going to continue to talk about this. But there are 10 states that have measures on their ballot related to abortion, trying to advance abortion. So people need to be equipped of how to counter that. That's some of the information they're going to gain at this year's summit as well. And
also, it's not just the White House, as you have been intentional about pointing out. There's so many down ballot races, down to school board, from president to school board, that people need to engage on, and we hope to inform them about those as well.
And dog catcher.
And dog catcher.
Because we need godly dog catchers, especially cat catchers up in Ohio.
Springfield, Ohio.
Yes, that's right. Suzanne Bowdey, great to see you.
Thanks, Tony.